Hello, and welcome to episode 171 of Dark and Stormy Book Club. Today we visit with the author, Eric Dezenhall. Enjoy.
I'm Ann Dart.
I'm Tracy Stormy.
And I'm Kathy Knight.
And together we are
It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club,
a podcast for mystery lovers.
Welcome.
If you enjoy our show, please consider contributing to the Dark and Stormy Patreon. By becoming a patron, you will help us create better and quality content. There are also benefits to becoming a patron, such as exclusive content and Dark and Stormy merchandise. Become a supporter at patreon.com/darkandstormybc. Check our website for the link. We appreciate any and all contributions. Thank you.
False Light is put out by Greenleaf Book Group Press. Seasoned reporter Sanford, whose nickname is Fuse, is old school in every way: anti-technology, anti-millennial, and anti-gotcha journalism. After Fuse is asked to leave his paper pending a disciplinary investigation, he has plenty of time on his hands. So when his oldest friend approaches him for advice after the man's daughter says she was sexually assaulted by her boss, a prominent media star, Fuse agrees to help. He gives his buddy the only options he feels are available: report the incident to the police and risk a huge she said, he said smear campaign against the girl, or plan something even better: revenge. As a journalist, Fuse has a colorful background investigating criminals, politicians, gangsters, drug lords, and all kinds of shysters. And he knows plenty of shady sources. So he's the perfect person to enact a complex and ultimately entertaining plan to bring the popular media mogul down in the court of public opinion and make him pay. Eric Dezenhall is the author of fiction and nonfiction books that explore the themes and places that have defined his personal and professional life. From the Atlantic City boardwalk, where fortunes are promised but rarely made, to television studios where reputations are won and lost between a commercial break, Eric's books take readers on a guided tour of American media culture. He is the author of 11 books, including 3 nonfiction texts on crisis communication and corporate witch hunts. He is the CEO of Dezenhall Resources, a nationally recognized high-stakes communications firm. He frequently lectures in academic and business circles and regularly appears as a damage control expert on the international media. In addition to his nonfiction books, he is also the author of 7 novels. Eric is a graduate of Dartmouth College, where he studied political science and news media. He lives near Washington, D.C. with his family. We would like to welcome Eric Dezenhall to the program. He has a fascinating book called False Light. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks for having me.
I think that the title of this book intrigued me because I had never heard the phrase false light before. Just for our listeners' benefit, can you explain in a very short version of what false light actually is?
False light is a term from defamation law that basically means you may not have intended to say something false about somebody, but you ended up hurting them. So it would be the difference between if I wrote an article saying you were a serial killer and I knew that you were not, that would be defamation. But if I wrote an article about serial killers and I had a bunch of photos of serial killers, and I also had a photograph of you saying that you run a podcast, somebody could easily turn the page and say, boy, I never knew they were serial killers.
Okay. This book had us clamoring for more. We absolutely loved it. It was definitely a page turner, and we loved the revenge part of the book. I'm sure this has been tried before, but done quietly, I guess.
Yes, it is.
What would be the downside?
Well, the revenge that was taken in this book is not your traditional, the bad guy is beaten up or killed or something like that. What happens is his reputation is destroyed. I think that given the nature of the First Amendment in this country, where free speech is protected, the bad guy in this, who is a very aggressive New Age reporter who has committed a crime that goes unpunished, finds himself on the receiving end of a journalist who knows how to manipulate the system. So what he ends up doing is he uses the reporter's smear tactics against him, something that the reporter never imagined would happen, because one of the things that I find in my near 4 decades dealing with the news media is a lot of journalists, not all, like to ruin people, but they never expect that they're going to be on the receiving end of it. So I think that one of the things I see happening from time to time is every now and then, one time in a million, a journalist will tangle with somebody who has the power to push back at them. And that's really what happens in this book.
Oh boy, does it ever.
I really liked Fuse and his family. My heart broke for Samantha. Will Fuse be back in another installment? Is this going to be a series?
I don't know yet. I mean, I really like his character. I think that a lot of us are in his position. He's in his 50s. He's terrible with technology. His job in journalism, nobody really wants a journalist anymore. He is in this existential place where, as I say in the book, the world is basically saying, look, we don't really want you here anymore. And he's trying to figure out what to do about it. And so I think he's a good character. Plus, his revenge skills are unusual. Rather than blowing somebody up or something like that, he goes after their reputation. So I do think that there is room for a future with him. I'm just not quite sure how to go about it just yet. Sometimes it takes me a while for these things to come back at me. And in terms of the origin of the book, I had this very simple premise of what happens when a guy who's gotten away with everything his whole life finds himself on the receiving end of somebody just like him. But I didn't know what to do with it. I got distracted on a book that it took me a few years to write with a co-author about the spy world. It was a true story. And when I came up for air, an interesting thing had happened. The Me Too movement, Harvey Weinstein, cancel culture, all of those things had really started. And now I realized I had myself a plot. And I don't think that these things going on in the culture are going away anytime soon. So I think that there will be an opportunity to return to this.
Oh, I definitely think so. And boy, you're absolutely right. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. And it was good that you got tangled up in that other book.
I think so too. I mean, I spent a few years of my life with CIA and KGB people dropping things off at my house, and it was very exciting getting that story. But I needed the break for all of this stuff to go on in the culture to figure out how exactly I was going to deal with it.
Well, another aspect of the book that I thought was very intriguing was your portrayal of the cutthroat world of the newspaper business. Is that stuff that actually happens?
The vast majority of journalists, I think, are very serious people. They care about getting it right, but that's not terribly interesting. What's interesting are the people who don't care, the people who just want to hurt targets. And one of the things that I talk about in the book a lot, reporters who are basically assassins with a keyboard rather than a gun. I do think that you have different media outlets that have agendas. Fuse's old newspaper, which I call the Capital Incursion, has a new generation coming up that doesn't really want somebody like him there. And one of the things that is happening is a new generation of journalists is actively trying to force out an older generation. I think that you see older journalists hanging on by their fingernails for dear life, but it's only a matter of time before they're destroyed and replaced by characters like the Pacho character, who is kind of a YouTube journalist who runs around ambushing people and ruining them. I think that while, again, not all journalists do that, I do believe that that is the direction where things are going, pure entertainment rather than partial entertainment.
One of the characters in the book was Nate, who is Fuse's father, and
Yeah.
he has some mental issues. Have you ever thought about writing a prequel which goes into Fuse and his relationship?
I have, and some of the people have asked me, why did you put that in this book? It doesn't necessarily go with the plot dealing with this person who is probably some version of bipolar and borderline, but he's also brilliantly manipulative and he gets away with it. And the reason why I thought it was relevant to this story, why did Fuse become an investigative reporter? And I think one of the reasons why he did is he has this history with somebody who is quite abusive, but who is cunning enough to know how to hide it. He knows where to do it and where not to do it. I'm very interested in this idea of cunning mental illness as opposed to mental illness where somebody just simply cannot help being what they are. With the father character, Nate, he does have some degree of control over when he unleashes his poison. And that was very interesting to me because I know those of us who are interested in the area of mental illness, there's always that question, can they help it or can't they help it? Well, what if they can help some of it? What if they are clever enough to know how to do it? I've written other novels that deal with organized crime, and you always hear this issue of sociopath, and that implies that they can't help any of it. What if they have tremendous control over what they do? And that's a very interesting thing to me.
I have to say, I absolutely loved when Nate passed away.
They didn't believe it.
Yeah, he was like, no, he'll be back.
Are you
Oh, well,
sure
yeah.
he's dead?
That was one of the funniest parts of the book where he gets the news that his father has died and he says, no, he didn't.
Did you check and see if
Yeah, exactly. He's telling the funeral home, can you check? Because I don't think that that's what happened here.
Because I think Nate was larger than life.
And not in a good way.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Paco kind of reminded me of a certain mustachioed Fox News person. That possibly your inspiration for this character?
No, it was a funny observation on your part. Somebody else made it too. They said, he's got this nod to Hispanic heritage, where in the case of Pacho, he has no Hispanic heritage. But I'm very interested in people who fabricate their background. This woman from that company out west, Theranos, the blood testing company, she completely fabricated her background, her voice. And this is very interesting to me because in the internet age, I think a lot of people now have the tools to fabricate an image. And look, to some degree, we all cultivate something like that. I mean, we all have a clothing style, which somebody could say is cultivated, and to a benign level it is. But in this character of Pacho, he has invented kind of this Indiana Jones character. He has this head fake toward being of some Hispanic heritage, where he's a rich kid from Baltimore, from a waspy type of background. It is endlessly fascinating to me how people fabricate their backgrounds. To me, one of the things I was playing with is, what is the worst thing you can do to a guy like this? And it's not kill him, it's expose him. It is show the world that he is not who he says he is. This is something that I see from time to time, especially writing about organized crime and spies, by the way. You're dealing with a world of people who lie. How do you write about somebody who may be saying they're a spy or a mobster, who really may not be? It was just something I thought was a great way to take revenge, which is to tell the truth about somebody.
One of the things that compelled me about Fuse was he couldn't even get an elevator to work.
That's right.
Is the malady of reversed ions a real problem that some people have?
I'll tell you a funny story. I use technology all day long. I mean, here we are on this Zoom call using technology, but it doesn't mean I'm good at it. Years ago, we had a masseuse come to the house because my wife and I both had back issues, and we had a fax machine, and if somebody was trying to send a fax during the massage and it kept jamming, and this masseuse, who was kind of a crunchy, holistic person, waved her hands over me and she said, "Oh, you're one of them, I can tell." And I said, "What does that mean?" She said, "You can't get near anything with technology, can you?" And I said, "How did you know?" And she said, Well, I believe you're somebody who has reversed ions. I had never heard that before, and it may be complete quackery,